Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin Sayyidil Mursaleen wa ala alihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Thank you TAIF as well as Adil for joining this session today for preparation for the CSAA examinees. I hope inshallah this will be beneficial inshallah for all of us. Before we proceed, thanks to all of the attendees as well. So before we proceed, I would like to start with a very quick question. And please participate in the chat box by responding to it. Why would you like to prepare or attend for the CSAA exam, the AAOIFI Certified Sharia Advisor and Auditor? Just put it in one sentence. Okay, so I'm giving you around 2 minutes. Please type in the chat box and then we will start inshallah. Thank you. To repeat, why or what is the objective or the motive behind preparing or appearing for this Certified Sharia Advisor and Auditor exam? Just type in one sentence. Do not hesitate. There is no right or wrong, and definitely will not be marked for this question. So just feel free to share what exactly is the objective behind it. I'm getting some responses already. Thank you. There is one question in the Q&A we received. Can we see the other participants and the chat Q&A of all? You will not be able to see other participants unless they are basically given a chance to come to the panel to ask question. But if there is any comment in the chat box, inshallah, you can see that. Okay, so let's read out some of the comments. From Fawad Ahmed, he mentioned for better knowledge of Sharia banking. Okay, then Sajjad Ali to serve the role as Islamic banker in Sharia compliant manner. Then we have to better understanding the fine Sharia nuances of Islamic finance and banking industry. Then from CD, we have to have deeper understanding of Islamic finance standards and increase my chance of employability. So we have some career progression here. Then from Khaja Masood Raza, I'm in academia doing PhD. So this CSAA will help in understanding standardization. Okay, great. Okay, okay, all right, for Fatima, to be part of the Sharia Advisor community around the globe. Okay, this is interesting. It's need of the hour and surely give my career. So this is again a career one, to be familiar with AAOIFI Sharia standards and to join IFIs. Then from Mira Aziz to get certified and serve in the field of Islamic finance. From Faisal Shah to understand better the standards and then serve the IF industry. Then from Fatima Hubail التدقيق الشرعي يجمع بين العبادة والمعاملة حيث يحرص المدقق على تطبيق الشريعة. Wonderful, wonderful. I think let's start with what Sister Fatima has put. So basically, when we are talking about Sharia audit, what exactly we are doing? We are doing a career, of course, that is there. We are having understanding is that there, but most prominently, it is yajma' bayn al-ibadah. It is bringing in the ibadah, worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for every Muslim who are going to appear for CSAA, the only objective that we have is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to ensure that the worship is done in a proper manner, which is the main objective for us being in this world. Of course, inshallah, through that, we will also get other benefits or career progression in terms of halal earning, in terms of having deeper understanding to ensure that that worship, that pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proper. All those will come as a sub point. So the main objective again for us is to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our efforts. I mean, Jazakumullah khairan for your participation. Okay, so today, inshallah, as we all know, we will have a quick overview of the AAOIFI Advisor and Auditor CSAA participation. It will not be very comprehensive, but it will be an overall quick summary to ensure that you can have a quick journey through it. And later on, inshallah, definitely you can further prepare for it. So I have a very brief presentation to share and have some discussion based on this. Let's start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay. So in a nutshell, this Sharia, this exam, Certified Sharia Advisor and Auditor, covers 48 Sharia standards. Sharia standard number 1 until 48. Please note that there are several other Sharia standards issued after those 48, but those are not covered for the CSAA curriculum until now. However, as you may already know, that CSAA is being revamped, and inshallah the newer Sharia standards will also be part of it. And the newer Sharia standards will also be part of the revamped CPA book as well. And then the first 4 governance standards, number 1, 2, 3, and 4, out of which 3 are directly linked with Sharia governance. The 4th one is also indirectly linked with Sharia governance. So those are part of the CSAA exam. But again, as you may already know, that there are more than 4 governance standards issued by AAOIFI, which are not part of CSAA exam. So what are those 48 Sharia standards and 4 governance standards? I hope you already have the book and you have a glimpse of those, a good glimpse of those. In general, I don't have the list in this slide. In general, there are some Sharia standards which cover the contracts. For example, Murabaha, Ijara, each different types of Sharia contracts are covered in detail. Musharaka, Mudaraba, Tawarruq, Wakalah. Then you have you also have like insurance, Islamic reinsurance, Waqaf, Zakat. Waqaf and Zakat is not contract per se, but also a module. So those we can call like fundamental Sharia standards. Then we have like some supplementary Sharia standards, like for example, banking services, or how to calculate Murabaha, how to calculate profit for Mudaraba accounts. So those are like, I would say, built upon those fundamental Sharia standards. So if you have a good grasp of the fundamental Sharia standards, each and every module with its holicity, then hopefully, inshallah, you will be able to answer, or even you will be able to catch the different clauses of those supplementary Sharia standards very well. Please note that this classification is not provided by AAOIFI. I'm just giving from my experience, right? So what we'll do today, inshallah, we'll just try to have a quick overview of few of the things, just like a quick revision. We will have some quizzes as well. And then we will end up, inshallah, with some tips for last minute tips before the exam, the AAOIFI CSAA exam. All right, so let's start with the very first Sharia standard. If you remember, the very first Sharia standard and AAOIFI, number 1, is about trading in currencies. Now, in this hadith, which is narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned 6 commodities, out of which 2 are basically dhahab and dhahab, gold versus gold. He also mentioned in similar narration other 4 commodities. So in this we only have dhahab and dhahab, meaning gold versus gold, and wariq bil wariq, meaning silver for silver. So what this hadith is saying is that do not sell gold for gold unless for equal quantity. Also, do not sell silver for silver unless for equal quantity. Then also he is mentioning la tabi'u minha ghaiban binajizin, meaning that do not sell spot for deferred. So based on this hadith, there are few rulings for exchanging currencies. if the currencies, now first of all, why we derive the rule of currencies from this hadith, which is particularly for gold and silver, because gold and silver are considered currencies by nature, and all other currencies up to the modern world, like paper currencies, virtual currencies, in today's world, cryptocurrencies, if those are considered currencies, will also have similar ruling of gold and silver. Now, the summary of this ruling is that if the currencies are of same type, like gold and gold, or silver, silver, dollar, US dollar, US dollar, Saudi riyal, Saudi riyal, if those are of same types, in today's world, each international currency will be considered as different type. Now, if these are of same type, then it has to fulfill two conditions. One is to be equal in quantity. So like 100 grams of gold for 100 grams of gold, even though the quality is a bit different, but the quantity is still must be the same. Unless if it is exchanged with a different type, like gold for silver, or silver for US dollar, or US dollar for Saudi riyal. In that case, the quantity could be different. Like $1 could be exchanged, let's say, for 3 or 2 riyals, for example, no issue. But if it is for US dollar for US dollar, or Canadian dollar for Canadian dollar, then it has to be exactly same amount. This is called riba al-fadl. If we don't follow this, then there will be a riba al-fadl coming into the picture, which is a prohibition. Now, if it is either a same type or a different type, there is also a second condition. This is common for all currencies exchange, which is it has to be on spot. It cannot be deferred. So we cannot purchase gold on a deferred price, deferred payment basis. We cannot purchase currency at a deferred payment basis. So all the international currency exchanges or forex transactions, for example, has to follow the same rule. Hence, we will see futures, forward, options in currencies are not allowed. Anything that has representation of currencies, like even if you will find later on under the Shari'a standard of financial papers, for example, you will see that if a stock, right, a shares, it is representing cash or debt, then it will also have to follow the rules of this trading in currencies. In Arabic, we call bay'u sarf. So meaning that, let's say a company which has the maximum amount, of course, it has to be 70% or more cash, or something equivalent to cash, right? So in that case, we have to deal with that stock similar to the ruling of sarf, or trading in currencies. Meaning that if face value of the stock is $10, we can only exchange it at $10. We cannot exchange it for more or less, because it is taking the rule of currencies. So this ruling of trading in currency will come over and over again in many other Shari'a standards, many other clauses. If something is considered as a currency because it is a currency, or the things that it represents, most of it are currencies, gold, silver, cash, etc., then it has to be number one on a spot. And it is, if it is exchanged to a similar nature of money, then it has to be on similar quantity as well. Like as I mentioned, if the face value of 10, then we cannot exchange it without the par value. Same thing for sukuk as well. If the sukuk doesn't have a representation of most intangible assets, like 70% or more, 30% or more tangible assets is not there. So meaning the cash or liquid money is 70% or even more. So in that case, we still have to adhere to the rule of sarf, meaning that it cannot be traded without the par value. It can only be transferred without any additional value being made. So I hope this is very clear, because this is a very short Sharia standard, but the rulings are applied again and again in many other Sharia standards in many other cases. But if you understand the gist, then you can apply anywhere and everywhere it should be applied to. So the spot exchange or equal value should be observed in the exchange of same currency. Binding bilateral promise is not allowed. So when we somebody could say, okay, we will not transact in forward or futures transactions for currencies exchange. Rather, we will have promises. Now, the promises, there is a Sharia standard on al-wa'd wal-mu'ada, unilateral promise and bilateral promise, which is not part of the curriculum for CISA, I believe, within the 48 Sharia standards. No. However, if you read that, you can see that when the promises are binding and bilateral, then it resembles a contract. Now, in case of currency, if we are making a bilateral binding promise and we are saying that it resembles a contract, now the question would be, on what is the contract? The contract is on currencies which will not be paid on a spot. It will be paid in a future date based on the promise, right? So this is the reason why it will not be considered Sharia compliant. Similarly, a debt may be settled with any other currency if it is the exchange portion of is fully settled on spot and according to the market rate. So in some cases, we may have debts to be settled against a different currency. Maybe the debt was on, let's say, Saudi Riyal, but on the date of settlement, the debtor is asking, can I pay, let's say, in Australian dollar or Malaysian ringgit? The creditor is saying, yes, you can. So what they need to do is they need to take the exchange rate or market rate of that date on the day of the settlement. Why is it this necessary? Because what is happening here is that the debt is being converted to another currency during that time. Hence, we need to exchange that, make that conversion happen on that day itself. And we only can do that by applying the exchange rate of that day. In other words, something that is agreed upon right on that day, not pre-agreed. If it was pre-agreed, then it differs. It makes it Sharia non-compliant because it will be considered that the conversion happened already at a previous time. So if you go through the Sharia standard now, you'll find few other clauses, but those are the main gist that we have discussed. So we'll go to another Sharia standard now. Okay. Now, in Sharia standard on procrastinating debtor. Now, what is a procrastinating debtor? A procrastinating debtor is someone who has the ability, but he's not paying. He's just delaying without any reason. Now, this is something that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has considered is a zulm. He said, Matalul ghaniyi zulmun. The procrastination of a rich, of someone who can pay, is considered zulm. Oppression. Oppression on whom? Of course, on the creditor, the one who gave you the money, the one who lent the money, or the one who sold something but hasn't been paid yet. He is being oppressed if the debtor, the one who is supposed to pay, is not paying on time, even though he is able to pay. So this is the base hadith of this whole Sharia standard. Now you will see there are a few more things discussed. We only have highlighted few. So one is, for example, the procrastinating debtor is liable the actual cost of debt collection. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I need to address a quick message. Okay, sorry. So the procrastinating debtor is liable for the actual cost of debt collection. So if there is any legal measure that has been taken by the creditor to collect the debt, or that the creditor has to appoint someone, so those actual cost, the actual cost that has been undertaken, will be the liability of the debtor, not the creditor. Undertaking to donate is allowed with conditions, and penalty charge is not allowed. Now, when there is a delay in payment, when there is a default in payment, now of course, if he is someone in need, he cannot pay on time, etc., then of course then of course we have to basically give him some concession based on the hadith and based on the verses. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned وَإِن كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ. However, if he is a procrastinating debtor, he's just taking time, he's just making excuses. In that case, usually what is being done is penalty is being charged. Now, when we charge penalty on a payment, a payment that has already become a default, it become a debt, it become a dain. In that case, any penalty charge would be a riba, would be interest, which is not Sharia compliant, and hence it has to be channeled to a charity. But now, what is the best way to deter a procrastinating debtor? We will find that there could be many different ways. There could be blacklisting the debtor, and there could be some other repercussions which can be made. But let's say if someone is insisting that, no, this is the only way we can deter a procrastinating debtor. So in that case, AAOIFI and the Sharia standards has said, okay, what the debtor can do, he can, in a separate document, he can undertake to donate a lump sum, or it could be a percentage of the defaulted amount to donate to the charity fund of the IFI. Now, what is the difference between charging a penalty and undertaking a donate? You can see the outcome is same. Both has to go to charity fund, right? However, there is a fundamental difference. When we are charging a penalty, we are saying if you default, then this is the penalty you have to pay. Initially, that penalty goes to the IFI's fund as a revenue, and then it is charged back, given to charity. So that makes a link, that makes the initial link to riba. Meaning that, in other words, it's like IFI is saying, I'm okay to take the riba, but later on I will pay the riba to the charity. Now, Sharia has prohibited even contracting the riba, even having riba in the contract. We know there is a very popular hadith where Prophet ﷺ has cursed, la'ana Rasulullah ﷺ, akila riba wa mukilahu wa shahidayhi wa katibahu. He has cursed the one who takes riba, pays riba, witnesses the contract of riba, or writes the contract of riba. So all the four parties related to a riba contract are cursed. So we cannot even sign the riba contract. We are not allowed to do that as well. This is the same, like some people ask us, can we use a conventional credit card and we will pay on time? The answer is, when you are taking the conventional credit card, what are you signing for? You are signing for that I will pay interest if I don't pay on this and this amount of time. So it's a riba contract. Even though you are not paying riba, it itself is something being prohibited, right? So that's the main difference. When we are putting penalty in the contract, it makes it riba from the very beginning. When we are saying it's an undertaking to donate, it's not a contractual obligation between the debtor and the creditor. Rather, it's a separate undertaking which will directly go to charity, which will serve the exact same purpose of deterring the procrastinating debtor, but it will not be considered as riba. Hopefully this is clear. So let's move to the next part. Okay. We will see in the Sharia standard, there is no standard per se on Gharar, but this is something that will come over and over in the various different Sharia standards. So as you know, in Sharia standards, AAOIFI Sharia standards, there are few different types of contracts being covered, like sale contracts, Murabaha, Tawarruq, Salam, Istisna. All those are sale contracts. Ijara is a lease contract. Wakalah is an agency contract. Then you have Musharaka, Mudaraba. Those are partnership contracts. Now, in all such contracts, there could be Gharar. So we will see often the ruling could be different because of the existence of Gharar. So this is a very summarized version of all the different types of Gharar. It's basically taken from the SIPA book, but very well relevant for those who are appearing for CSAA as well. So you can see in case of the form of the contract, one of the Gharar could be because of two sales in one. So based on this principle, we will see, by the way, Gharar basically means uncertainty, keeping or leaving ambiguity in the contract. Now, not all types of Gharar would be impermissible. Some gharar would be tolerated, but some gharar would be not tolerated. There are also additional conditions for that. We'll not go to those things for today's session. But in general, if we look at this one, for example, two sales in one, Allah's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prohibited combining two sales in one. Now, what is the outcome in the overall Sharia standard? We will see in many clauses of the AAOIFI Sharia standards, it is over and over mentioned that it has to be separate. Like, for example, if it's a Musharaka mutanaqis or diminishing Musharaka, then you cannot combine the sale agreement and the lease agreement, or the partnership joint ownership agreement and the lease agreement. If it's a Murabaha, you cannot combine the wa'ad together with the purchase, with the sale. All those cannot be combined together. Each has to be separate and unconditional. Of course, there is a Sharia standard on al-jamu' bain al-uqud, combination of contracts. You can look further into it. It can be under the same file. However, one contract cannot be conditional into the other one. Especially there are few which are directly mentioned in Sharia. For example, bay'in wa salafin, combining between a qad, a loan contract, and a sale contract, because the sale contract could be a hayla, a prohibited trick to charge interest. Right, so those are some of the things you can find details in al-jamu' bain al-uqud or combination of contract Sharia standards. Contract contingent on a future event, a contract which is conditional upon a future event. This makes the form of the contract gharar, and hence we will see that or contract effective on a future event. So it will only affect in the future. So we will see that because of this, it's a gharar. We will have a prohibition of forward and futures, especially where both counter values are differed. Now, in case of salam, what happens? In case of salam, it's also a forward contract, but you have to pay the price on a spot and get the delivery deferred. This is allowed by Sharia. In case of istisna, what happens? Istisna is a very special contract. It's a manufacturing order contract where the commodities will be deferred, of course, because it has to be customizedly built or constructed or manufactured. But the price, it can be fully deferred, it can be fully paid on a spot, it can be paid on different milestones and phases. Now, if we keep istisna aside, there is no other contract, a sale contract, where both counter values can be deferred. Rather, it has been prohibited by Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, since he prohibited bay'ul kali bil kali. Al kali bil kali means deferred for deferred, because it has extreme gharar, extreme uncertainty, as both counter values are deferred. However, if it's a sale with either of the counter values paid on spot, then it's fine, as we already discussed. If it's a sale with a future date, it's not valid. It has to be something that mentions that it is initiated immediately. Of course, except lease contract, ijara contract. Ijara could be ijara mawsufa fi dhimma, forward ijara, meaning that we can sign a contract today that the ijara or the lease will start, let's say, from next week, from next month. Right? That is fine. So the rental will only be effective from that particular future date. Of course, subject to the availability of the rental item. Let's say it's a car rent. The rental will start only from tomorrow, 6 a.m. And it's, let's say the rent is based on hourly price, but the car was only made available from 7 a.m. So the lessor, the owner of the car, will not be eligible to get the rent of that 1 hour because it was not made available during that time. So that's a different case. But otherwise, sale contingent on a future event is not valid. Similarly, options contract. Options contract is also not valid because of the gharar in the form of the contract. What is the subject matter in an options contract? Put option, call option, are those subject matter that has been validated by Sharia? No. It's just a right, and also it has a lot of uncertainty. There are some rights Sharia has recognized, which has some sort of certainty. But there are other, especially options contract, when the contract itself is traded. This is something, it's a high level of uncertainty in the form of contract. And you can see those are being discussed, I believe, in the Sharia standard on financial papers or selling commodities in the organized markets. Most probably those are being discussed in those Sharia standards. So these are basically because of the gharar in the form of contract. Now in the subject matter, for example, if the subject matter is not in existence, then this is an issue. So for example, when it comes to murabaha, when the IFI is purchasing the asset from the vendor and then selling to the client, what if the subject matter is not existent, or it is not owned or not possessed by the IFI? Then it will trigger a Sharia non-compliant event for the IFI. Hence, the IFI needs to properly own and possess before it can sell to the client. And this is why, if you look at Murabaha Sharia standard, where the question is, can IFI appoint the client as an agent? So you can find in AAOIFI Sharia standard, in the default practices, that the IFI should directly purchase or appoint someone else, not the client. Only if it's a dire need. What is the explanation of dire need is not mentioned, but for example, it's a very specific business category where IFI doesn't have any specialization, or IFI couldn't find any other agent. In that case, IFI can appoint the client, and the client has to execute according to basically the steps that have been proposed, mandated by AAOIFI Sharia standards, for example. So in the first step, he has to procure from the vendor, then he has to hand over the possession to IFI. It could be constructive or it could be actual possession, and then only he can purchase it from the IFI and execute the Murabaha agreement. So if he is not following the sequence, so the ownership and possession is not clear for the IFI, then it may trigger a Sharia non-compliance event. So this is because there would be a gharar or uncertainty in the subject matter of the contract. Specification, if it is not specified, then it makes a problem in all types of sale and lease contracts. So in the sale contract, if we don't specify in Murabaha what exactly is the asset is, then it makes it a voidable contract. In a Salam, in Istisna, in Tawarruq, in all types of sale contracts is the same. In Ijara, if it is not specified what exactly the asset is, or what is the type of lease. For example, if it's a lease of human, Ijaratul Ashkhas, if it's a human being leasing, meaning in other words, employment. So what he is being employed for, or what is the work scope that we are looking for in terms of time, in terms of project, etc. If it is not specified, then it's gharar, and it makes it fasid, it makes it voidable. Voidable doesn't mean that it becomes Sharia non-compliant immediately. Rather, it has to be both parties need to agree upon. The specification needs to be done as soon as possible. Why, by the way, why is this elimination of gharar in the very first place being emphasized? To only ensure that both parties know exactly what they are doing, and there is no point of information asymmetry, especially the material information. So there is complete satisfaction between the parties. This is what one of the objectives in fiqh mu'amalat al-maliyah in Islam. If we look at Al-Quran Kareem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ الْبَاطِلِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارَةً عَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنْكُمْ. Do not consume each other's wealth, but how? Through tijara, through business, through trade, عَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنْكُمْ, with mutual satisfaction. So this mutual satisfaction is not there when the gharar is extreme. And these are some examples of extreme gharar. Okay. In terms of delivery of the subject matter, some of the gharars could be like sale of debts or receivables. There is a separate Sharia standard on bay'ud dayn, I think it's Share Standard number 59, if I'm not mistaken. It's not part of the curriculum, so you can skip it for now. Of course, you should read it after the exam. Sale of expected future cash flow. It also has some gharar, hence it has to be well agreed upon, especially when it's part of the valuation, etc. Sale of property illegally possessed by a third party, sale of stolen goods. Sale of stolen goods is just battle, is just a void completely. Other terms of the contract like price not specified, period of payment not specified, those are also some areas of gharar. One should look for any. This is why we'll see in Murabaha, the price needs to be specified. In Salam and Istisna, price needs to be specified. Tawarruq, right? Ijara, the rent or the fee needs to be specified. Jawala, the commission needs to be specified. Wakalah, if there is fee, the agency fee needs to be specified. Everywhere we have to specify the subject matter and also the counter value of the contract. In Musharaka, Mudaraba, the profit sharing ratio needs to be specified. If it is not specified, then it will go to the default practice of the society. If there is no default practice, then it's no longer valid. So in Mudaraba, for example, the Mudarib will just get a rent, ujra, some salary because of the time he has employed. So again, this is the fundamental reason or basis, Sharia basis, for which we will find in many Sharia standards, across many Sharia standards, a lot of permissibility or impermissibility has been mentioned because of such gharars there. Okay, now we'll have a quick question and there will be a quiz popping up. So please answer in the quiz. Brother Ahsan, Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, we'll look for another 15 to 20 seconds, inshallah. All right, well done. We see B got most responses, 77%, and it is correct. We didn't discuss every contract in detail in this question, in these slides, but if you look at the thing, basically the teacher is awarding something, right? So it's a non-commutative contract. It's not an aqd muawada where we have two counter values. The children, the kids, in the exam, I mean, they will get a reward for what? For no counter value. So it's like just a hiba or a reward, we can say. So in such case, it can be no issue. We can have that gharar is that is fine. Like if someone is saying, I'm going to donate my X, he doesn't even mention that whole details, right? Or he's just saying that I'm giving to you this one. So some sort of gharar in that case is fine because it's a non-commutative contract. Jazakumullah khairan for your participation. By the way, I have noticed some questions coming to the chat box. Please put all your questions in Q&A. So it's later on I can easily go to this one, inshallah. Okay. All right. So I think now many of the Sharia standards I can just go quickly because I have discussed enough when it during the Gharar slide. So in Murabaha, we need to have the offer and acceptance in place. The subject matter needs to be specified. All the things that we have already mentioned. It cannot be gold, silver, or currency, because when it comes to gold, silver, and currency, it cannot be deferred. By the way, Murabaha by default is not a deferred price contract. What Murabaha means is that there will be a profit and the cost price, the profit will be disclosed. It's one of the few buyu'ul amana, one of the trust-based sale contract. What does it mean? Usually when we go to the store or we ask the seller how much is the price, he will just say the price. He doesn't need to disclose the price or the profit, and there is no special virtue attached to disclosure as well. However, for some circumstances, one may want to disclose the profit or the cost price so that he earns more trust from the purchaser, from the other party. It could be either the purchaser or the seller as well. So Murabaha is one of such contracts, and in that contract, in that type of sale, it's sold with profit. So there is a profit and it is being disclosed. Now, what we do in IFI, we basically also attach another contract or another leg to it, which is deferred payment. Bay ta'jil. Now both are coming together and it is making like a deferred Murabaha contract. So because it's a deferred contract, by default how it is being practiced, so we cannot have gold, silver, or any other currency as the subject matter. Because if you recall, all those currencies need to be always exchanged on a spot. Okay, in terms of price, it includes only direct cost. So since it's a bay'ul amana, it's a trust-based sale, the IFI can do without Murabaha as well. It can just say it's a general sale contract. In that case, you don't need to disclose the cost. You don't need to put any additional disclosure. But once we are saying it's a Murabaha, then it has to be disclosure of cost there or the markup being made. So when it comes to cost, only direct cost related to this Murabaha can be considered. If there is any discount received, that has to be disclosed as well. Cost and profit should be fixed and known. Unconditional rebate is acceptable. This is important. So if there is an early payment, as I mentioned, by default, Murabaha is not a deferred payment contract, but usually deferred payment is being attached to it. Now, in case of payment, if there is a early payment by the client, can we give him a rebate? If it's unconditional, then it's fine. If it is conditional, then according to a big group of Sharia scholars, it's also a type of riba. It's like a reverse riba. Just like when we extend time and we give an increase in amount, it makes it riba. Similarly, when we decrease the time and we give a discount, it also makes it riba. But of course, when it is conditional. But if it is unconditional, there was no condition mentioned in the contract, but from its own discretion, the IFI is giving a discount, a rebate, then that should be fine. Okay, the Sharia standard is quite long. We are not covering any other aspect here. You can go further and hope you can find. Now, when it comes to Tawarruq, Tawarruq is in the first leg, it's like Murabaha. But in the second leg, when how it is like Murabaha, by the way, is that just like Murabaha, IFI will purchase a commodity from the commodities exchange, and then it will sell to the customer. But then after the customer has received the constructive possession of the commodity, he doesn't actually need it. He wants cash. He wants liquid money. Hence, he will sell back either by himself or by employing the IFI or anyone else as an agent to sell it, right? Now, when it comes to sell it, that's the additional leg in Tawarruq. So once he sells it, he obtains the cash. Now, since it has an additional leg, so there are some additional conditions, like the commodity should be either physically or constructively received by the buyer. So the buyer here is the client. So client needs to first either receive constructively or physically. The first buyer, by the way, is the IFI itself, because the IFI also doesn't hold the commodity. It also purchases from the commodities exchange. And the commodity should not be sold to the same party. So let's say person A sold a commodity, a certain amount of, let's say, crude oil or palm oil to IFI. Then IFI needs to take the possession constructively or physically, and then it will sell to the person B, right? Now, person B, can he sell back to person A, or can he sell back to the IFI? So when it is coming to the same party, then it makes it, if it is directly to IFI, then of course it is an aina. If it is coming to the same commodity seller, then also it has a perspective of aina. Now, bayul aina is buyback, and buyback is prohibited because it's a type of fictitious sale, which is apparently a sale, but in the background it's not a sale. It's just an exchange of cash for cash. So it's a riba, and we cannot do that. We are prohibited to do that. So it has to be, it cannot go to the same party. Now, there is one question sometimes people ask. So when the IFI is purchasing from the commodities exchange from a broker, he may not know, and even the broker may not know, that he is purchasing back from the same buyer, right? Once it goes all the way around to this. So if it is not attached to the first sale, or it is completely unknown, then that should be fine. But if it is all changed up properly and is going back to the same seller, this is where it becomes aina. The contracts must be separate. This is an important part. And remember, in the Gharar slide, I mentioned when it comes to two sale in one sale, I have elaborated this, that all the contracts in IFIs, today we have in many cases multiple contracts combined together. So this is where the Shari'a standard on combination of contracts is very important for us to understand. So the gist of that Shari'a standard is that contracts must be separate, not interlinked. So this has to apply here as well. The customer should sell the commodity himself or through an agent other than the IFI. The IFI should not arrange a proxy of a third party to sell on behalf of the customer. This is very important, because if the IFI is selling on behalf of the customer as well, the whole thing is just very much organized, and this is something that is considered Sharia-wise quite problematic. So according to AAOIFI, it has to be other than the IFI selling to the broker or the commodities exchange. All right, now let's go to some securities that AAOIFI has mentioned. There is a Sharia standard on guarantees, also discussed in Murabaha. Also later on, there is another Sharia standard on arbun. I believe it's not part of the curriculum, so you may not have to look it right now, but you can look it later on. But in general, if we look at from a holistic point of view, now hamish jidiyah is a security deposit that is being made during the promise stage, before the contract being executed, right? Let's say a murabaha. A customer goes to the IFI, he wants to purchase a car, and then the IFI has to find the vendor, purchase the car, and then sell to the customer. But what if IFI, after purchasing the car, doesn't have the client anymore and the client just runs away? So the IFI will incur a loss. Hence, IFI can require a hamish jidiyah, a security deposit from the customer, before purchasing the commodity or the product from the vendor. That's what we call hamish jidiyah. Another type of security deposit, or we can call it earnest money, is arbun. Arbun is taken after the contract has been completed. So in the same scenario, the IFI has purchased from the vendor, then it signed a Murabaha agreement with the client, and then it has taken an arbun, an earnest money. So this is the difference between the two. Please remember that Hamish Jiddiya comes before contract, Arbun comes after contract. Now there is a slight difference in the ruling between the two. When it comes to Hamish Jiddiya, let's say after the promise, the customer has decided to just run away for whatever reason. Maybe an emergency came and he has changed his mind or whatever. Let's say he has given $10,000 as a security deposit, whereby the car deal was around $100,000. And the IFI has only incurred a cost of $90,000. So IFI wanted to make $10,000 out of it and sell it to the customer for $100,000, whereby the customer has put $10,000 as Hamish Jiddiya. So what happens after the IFI has spent $90,000 to acquire the car? It finds that the customer is no longer there, or the customer is backing out. So what it will do? It will have to sell to another party, a third party. Now let's say after selling to the third party, it was able to sell at $95,000. So it purchased at 90 and it was able to sell at $95,000. It was still short of $5,000 that it was supposed to sell to this customer, right? Now, is it a loss or not? It is an opportunity loss, not an actual loss. Actual loss is where you lost the capital. So in this case, for example, maybe IFI has put 90,000, but it was only able to recover 85,000. That is an actual loss. But in this case, it was still able to make 5,000 profit, even though it was short from the expected profit it could make from the client. So this is not an actual loss. Hence, IFI has to return the entire amount to the customer, even though he backed out. So you will find this over and over again in IOFI standards, that opportunity loss is not considered as an actual loss, something that can be recovered from the other party in Sharia. Opportunity loss is any loss that actually didn't happen per se. I mean, someone didn't lose the capital, rather it just came short of the expected income or expected revenue. Now, in case of Arbun, let's say the same scenario, the contract happened for $100,000, and then the customer has given $10,000 saying that I will be paying the rest $19,000, let's say within X amount of time, within X month of time. But it hasn't yet, I mean, there is still chance that this contract may not go long and the customer may back out. So this is where it can be considered as an advance payment against the contract. Now, what happens after some time? The IFI finds that the customer has backed out and he doesn't want to continue. Now, in that case, it may retain the entire $10,000. However, it is still best for it to retain only actual loss, meaning the same way. So just like Hamish Jiddiya, now the IFI has to sell this car to someone else, and let's say it has been able to recover more than $90,000, more than the initial capital it has put. So there is no actual loss, right? No actual loss. So by default, it is possible that it retains the entire $10,000. So it makes this 95 plus 10, $105,000, right? It may retain, but the best is to return anything other than the actual loss, both for Arbun and Hamish Jiddiya. Okay, when it comes to promissory notes or different types of checks, it can be only used, it shouldn't be used before the due date, it should be only used on the due date. I think that's very general. Yeah, so these are few securities mentioned here, but there could be difference as well. Okay, now let's go to Salam Istisna. I think we mentioned a bit about those contracts. Both are forward contracts in the sense that in both contracts, the product or the commodity is being delivered in a future date. However, there are some differences. So in Istisna, the product requires manufacturing. You have to put in different things together and manufacture something else or turn it into something else. It could be a construction, it could be a manufacturing process. Whereby in Salam, it's basically a fungible and commonly available commodity, usually like agricultural products, etc. Salam, the full payment has to be made on spot. In Istisna, it could be spot, it could be deferred, it could be installments. I mentioned that before as well. In Salam, the cancellation has to be mutual. In Istisna, if the work hasn't been started, the orderer, the purchaser can unilaterally cancel. Of course, if in the contract they sign together, it mentions that no one can unilaterally cancel, then they have to follow that. The delivery date in Istisna could be flexible, but in Salam it must be fixed. And in penalty clause, Salam, we cannot have any penalty clause. We cannot say if you don't deliver within a specific amount of time, then you have to pay this and this penalty. We cannot have that. But in Istisna, it is allowed. So those are the very, very basic differences. Other than that, since both are sale contracts, things that we have discussed in Murabaha, in Tawarruq, in one way or another, the principles are same. In fact, whatever we have discussed in the Gharar slide are also same. Okay, now it's time for another quick quiz. Brother Ahsan, please help us to have a quiz pop up. Are you there, Brother Ahsan? Okay, thank you. Yes. Please choose your right answer. Okay, we have, mashallah, a lot of responses. However, it's not so satisfactory. Perhaps maybe we will have some more seconds. So what is the question? Under what circumstances in Murabaha can various profit rates as benchmark be charged? This question was not covered in our slides so far. I think that was one of the reasons why we have less correct answers. But that's fine. Let's close the poll. Jazakallah khair, Jazakumullah khairan for participating. The answer is none, basically. So if we look at the answers, the first one is Murabaha transaction is bifurcated into tranches, or deferred Murabaha, spot Murabaha, none of the above. So basically, the answer is none of the above. The profit in a Murabaha transaction cannot be benchmarked, as it must be known at the time of contract signing. We cannot have various profit rates. It has to be a fixed margin because it's a sale contract. Unlike Mudaraba or Musharaka, where we can have some variables, we will discuss inshallah, right? Just in this section, we'll discuss inshallah. So now let's proceed to Musharaka and then Mudaraba. Musharaka and Mudaraba are two partnership contracts mentioned in AAOIFI standards. In brief, Musharaka is where two or more parties put their capital and make it a profit-sharing venture. In Mudaraba, it's one party putting the capital and then other party managing the venture. In the party putting the capital, we call him Rabbul Mal, and the other party we call him Mudarib. Now, one of the most important part in Musharaka and Mudaraba is to understand the profit and loss mechanism. because this is where a lot of things will be dependent, and in terms of permissibility, etc., all will be based on this. So first and foremost, the profit sharing ratio needs to be determined. It has to be very well specified. It has to be understood by the parties and acknowledged by the parties and agreed upon. What means, what does it mean by profit sharing ratio? So profit sharing ratio is a percentage, is a specific percentage of profit. Profit means after getting the revenues, we deduct all direct expenses from it, and we look at what is remaining. If the capital is intact, so anything above the capital is profit. Let's say we have a revenue of $10,000 and we have the capital was, let's say, $5,000. So from $10,000, we first deduct the direct expenses. Let's say direct expenses is $2,000. So 10 minus 2 makes it 8. Then we look at our capital. Is the capital intact? So 8 minus 5, yes, capital is intact, and we have another $3,000. So that $3,000 is profit. Now, what we can agree upon is an X percentage of that profit. So let's say 50% of that profit, so it will make it 50% of 3,000, which is 1,500. We cannot fix a lump sum amount as profit. We cannot say, okay, my profit sharing ratio is $1,500 per annum per year. We cannot say that. We cannot even say X percentage of capital. Just like ROI is expressed, return on investment is expressed. We cannot say that as well, because whenever we say X percentage of the capital in a partnership contract, it immediately makes it a riba, because it's a fixed amount guaranteed. So that makes it a riba, that makes it like a loan. So those are the things we cannot do. We can have variable profit sharing ratio, by the way. What does it mean is, let's say in year 1, we have 50-50 from the profit. In year 2, it's 60-40. In year 3, it is 30-70. We can have that way, no problem. As long as there is no room or there is no such method which deprives one of the partners completely from participation in profit. For example, we are saying that, okay, we have, let's say, a Musharaka where we have 3 different businesses running on. And we are saying, okay, let's do this mechanism. If there is a profit from business A, then it goes to you. If there is a profit from business B, then it goes to me. Now, what is the consequence of this condition? Maybe the profit is only there from business A, so the other party will be deprived. Or maybe the profit is only in business B. So in that case, the other party will be deprived. So this is something that we have to be always mindful about. Second condition is the one who is a sleeping partner. By the way, who is a sleeping partner by definition? Sleeping partner is one who puts in the agreement that he will not be involved in work. That's the one who is sleeping partner. If there is nothing in the agreement, or he doesn't mention that he will not work, or he mentions that he will work, in such cases we may not consider him as a sleeping partner. Now, for sleeping partner, we cannot give him profit sharing ratio more than a capital contribution ratio. So for example, it's a venture of $10,000 where 2 parties come together, put 5,000 each. So we have a capital ratio of 50%, 50%. But let's say person A or partner A, he is also a working partner. He is also managing, putting his time and effort. Partner B, he chooses to be a sleeping partner. He will not be involved in the work anymore. Now, can we give partner B 51% profit? We cannot. The 50% profit we give him is in exchange of 50% capital that he has put. Now, what is that additional 1% in exchange of? He's not putting any work. He's not taking any additional liability. Hence, we cannot do that. But for this person, the partner who is also working, we can give him up to 99%, as long as there is a profit sharing for the other partner as well. Now, if you go for Mudaraba, in Mudaraba, it's always two parties, one party putting the capital, other party managing it. So the party managing it is the working partner. The party putting the capital is working partner by default. Sorry, is sleeping partner by default. So for the sleeping partner, for the working partner, since he is not putting any capital, we can give him from 1% to 99%, no issue. And for the sleeping partner also, we can give him from 1% to 99%, because he is putting 100% capital, but we cannot give him 100% capital, 100% profit, because if we are giving him 100% profit, then it is no longer a Mudaraba. It will be just normal, like his own venture, whereby the Mudarib is just working for him and we have to pay him some salary or something. So I hope this is well understood. If you understand this very well, then all other things here will be very much clear. Now, profit, I already explained that it has to be calculated after all direct expenses. It has to be distributed after actual or constructive valuation. So, for example, in traditional days, how would you calculate profit? You would have to liquidate the entire business, get all the things converted into cash, then you know exactly how much you have. But today, a business is usually continued for a number of years, sometimes even for centuries. Then how we calculate profit is by constructive valuation. So end of the financial year, we value the assets that we have. We value the fixed assets. We value this cash and everything. We get the total assets. So based on those constructive valuation, we can know exactly how much we have expense, how much we have revenue, and what is the profit. So after constructive valuation is where profit is realized, and we have to distribute the profit accordingly. Okay, profit distributed based on expectation. In IFIs, you will see if it's a Mudaraba savings account, for example. In many countries, the deposit side uses Mudaraba agreement. So let's say there is a Mudaraba savings account, Mudaraba fixed deposit account, Mudaraba blah 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 account deposit, and the IFI is distributing or disbursing provisional profit or expected profit mid of the year, for example. Now that is fine. However, end of the year or when there is a constructive valuation, it has to be settled. It has to be settled against the actual profit made. So if, let's say, IFI has already given more profit than it made actually, then it has to take it back, the additional amount. If it has paid lesser than what actually was made, then it has to top up. So that's what we are saying here. Loss shall always be proportionate to capital contribution ratio. Please remember that. Loss cannot be tweaked, customized, agreed upon otherwise. If someone has put 50% capital, by default, he has to bear 50% loss. The other party cannot agree that I will bear the loss, don't worry. The moment other party is saying, I will bear the loss, it makes it a capital guarantee. And the moment a partner guarantees the capital of another party, it immediately makes it a loan, not a capital anymore. Because capital is prone to loss. Loan is not prone to loss. Loan is guaranteed. So it makes it a loan. Now one can say, okay, fine, so what? The moment it makes it a loan, and we give him any benefit, additional benefit attached to it contractually, it makes it riba. It makes it prohibited. And this is why you can find in AAOIFI standards that the Mudarib cannot provide capital guarantee. In Musharaka, the partner cannot provide capital guarantee. This is the same reason why a capital guarantee cannot be provided. So please remember that loss will always be proportionate to capital contribution ratio. Now, let me ask you, in Mudaraba, we know that the Rabbul Mal is putting 100% capital. Now, who will bear the loss based on this principle? Rabbul Mal, because he is the one who has put the capital. Now, one may argue, what if the Mudarib is someone who has cheated, who has made it a fraud or something? Now, there is a ruling for those cases as well. Sharia is not, the rulings are not with big holes in there. Of course, alhamdulillah, there are 360-degree rulings there. So in case a Mudarib or anyone with agency role, who are the ones who have agency role, or sorry, a trust-based role? So we have Mudarib, we have the working partner in Musharaka, we have the agent in Wakalah, we have the working partner, Mudarib, agent. Yeah, all three of them has sort of agency role and trust-based role. So all those people or individuals or companies or entities who has this trust-based role, they are not liable for loss that happen naturally without the negligence, misconduct, or breach of contract. But if there has been a loss due to their misconduct, so as I mentioned, the fraud, the cheating, etc., or due to their negligence, or due to their breach of contract, in that case, they will be liable for the loss. Now, what is a loss? Loss is a loss of capital. Remember that. When there is a capital loss, he will be liable to top up until the security of the capital. So if there was a $10,000 capital, then he has to top up until 10,000. But he is not liable to top up for the profit. Let's say initially he mentioned that there could be an expected profit of 7%. Now there was a loss because of his negligence. Now, is he liable to give that profit as well? No, because there was no profit. If there was profit, there was no loss. If there is a loss, then there is no profit. It's as simple as that. So he will only be liable to give the profit only. Capital up to the capital as well only. Now one may argue this opens a whole room of negligence, etc., for the Mudarib. Yes, it is true. And this is why when we do Mudaraba, Musharaka, or any kind of partnership, there has to be a basic due diligence in process. While we are choosing the partner, we are choosing the Mudarib. We know that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was chosen and appointed as a Mudarib by his future wife Umm-al-Mu'minin Khadija radiallahu anha, right? Why did she choose the Prophet ﷺ? Not because he was a big businessman within that time, but rather he was Amin. He was the person with integrity, with amana. So that's the basic quality that we need to look for when we're looking for partners. Of course, we also need to see if he is skilled with the business or the type of work that is required for this type of Mudaraba Musharaka. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. The point is, capital cannot be guaranteed. If there is a loss, the Mudarib, the agent, the Sharik, working partner, will be liable only if there is negligence, misconduct, or breach of contract. And the liability is up to the recovery of capital, not profit. All right. Now, diminishing Musharaka. Diminishing Musharaka is a Musharaka, so the rulings of Musharaka will apply. Musharaka agreement, buyer's promise, sale of purchase of shares, all will be independent contracts. So what are the things we have in diminishing Musharaka? Firstly, it's a Musharaka, it's a joint ownership. Then we have a lease contract, right? Usually if there is an Ijara component as well. Otherwise, there is a wa'ad, there is a promise by the client that he will purchase the shares of the IFI. And finally, there is a transfer of shares through a sale agreement or through a hiba. So all 3 or 4 documents and agreements need to be separate and needs to come as sequence. So we cannot just sign everything all together. It has to be, because there is a sequence, it has to come at a sequence. Like for example, the final transfer or sale agreement, if you sign it before on day 1, then there is no point that the IFI is charging any rental if there is an Ijara, because the whole ownership belongs to the client. So it all has to come at sequence. The binding promise. So the client will usually give a binding promise that I will purchase. Now, can that binding promise include a price agreed upon? Like, can it say, I will purchase IFI share at X amount? Cannot. Rather, he can say at a value to be agreed upon or at a market value. If he puts the price as well, it makes it more like a contract. And then, can we do a contract for a future date, a sale contract for a future date? We cannot. We discussed this during the Gharar slide, if you recall. Right? I see some hands being raised. Please ask the question in the Q&A. We try to finish first and then we will address the questions, inshallah. Okay. Not permitted to stipulate equity to be acquired at a face value. This is the same thing that I mentioned. Not permitted to stipulate that one partner should bear at all the cost of insurance or maintenance. Remember, in diminishing musharaka, they both are owners, co-owners, joint owners. I find the client, right? So when you are joint owner and there is any expense related to ownership, for example, insurance costs, for example, fundamental maintenance, you cannot pass it to one of the owners. This is a gross injustice or zulm. So it has to be always shared between the partners based on their share ratio. So if someone is owning only 10%, then he will bear only 10% of the total cost. One partner can rent or lease the share of the other partner. So this is what happens in diminishing musharaka. The client rents out, rents or leases the portion of the IFI. So this is permissible, no issue. Okay. Guidelines on profit of mudaraba. I will basically speed up this one because I already discussed quite in detail. Maybe some of the things known and clear, I think we have enough discussed. Ratio of profit. This one may have a ceiling. So this is important. We can in musharaka as well, we can do that. So we can say, okay, if profit goes beyond $5,000, then the additional amount will go to mudarib or will go to this partner to incentivize him. This is fine, because if profit is below 5,000, then all the parties or both parties in case of mudaraba, they share the profit. If it is beyond 5,000, still the amount below 5,000 is shared. The amount above 5,000 is going to one party. So there is no such circumstance where one party is completely deprived of profit. If you remember, this is the ground rule. If that is maintained, then you can design the profit sharing ratio in various different ways. So having a ceiling is fine. Okay, this brings us to another question, the quiz. Brother Ahsan, need your help again. Jazakumullah khairan. I see some good questions in the chat box. Please put all your questions in Q&As. Inshallah, we'll try to address all the questions, inshallah. Jazakumullah. Please participate in the questions. I see only few percentage have participated, not even 50% yet. All right, let's close the quiz. Thank you for your participation. The right answer is A, because if you see what we have discussed, that if the promise says that I will purchase at X percentage of value, X amount of value, or the face value, in both cases, he is giving an assurance of the price. So it makes it a guarantee of the capital. Hence, it is not permissible. And this is what the question is asking. But if it is for the market value, which we don't know, market value can go up, it can go down. There is no certainty. And if it is based on the agreement between the parties on that date of sale, still it's uncertain. So this uncertainty is what we are looking for, right? So those two are permissible. A is impermissible. Thank you. I think we covered most of the fundamentals in terms of whole Sharia standards. Now the rest of the slides I have is still quite around 20 slides, I would say, but inshallah we'll make it quite fast. Okay, now in terms of Ijara, right? In Ijara, we have fees to be paid, rentals or fees paid to the owner, who is the lessor. Now, if the Ijara is for the benefit or the utility of some asset, let's say a car, let's say a house, an apartment. Now there are some expenses required, some day-to-day expenses for the maintenance, some fundamental or ownership related expenses. Day-to-day expenses are which are required to maintain the utility of the asset, but not so much bigger, which may revoke or which may eliminate the main purpose of the asset. So for example, for a car, the engine has broke, or for a house, the roof has a big hole and the water comes, the rainwater comes down, right? So those could be considered as something that are fundamental expenses or maintenances. Those have to be borne by the owner or the lessor. But day-to-day maintenance could be borne by the lessee. Also, any other things that are related to ownership, like insurance payment, as I mentioned previously as well, those have to be paid by the lessor. In terms of guarantees, for Ijara, the lessor can obtain some guarantees from the lessee for security for debt payment, no issue. If there is a late payment, can they charge penalties? We discussed earlier. They cannot charge penalties. Rather, they can have they can do two things. Either number one, they can undertake it to charity. So they can sign an undertaking. When there is a default, they will pay X amount to the charity. And number two, they can negotiate future rentals. So if there was default and the previous rentals become debt, we cannot change that, but we can restructure for future rentals. The future rentals can be increased, of course, through mutual agreement if it is within a period that has already been agreed upon. If the agreed upon period has finished, then the lessor can say, no, I can only sign if the rent is X amount. So that should be fine. Okay, to compensate for losing. Okay, this we already discussed. Ijara is terminated. So there are few reasons why Ijara would be terminated. If the asset is already sold, if it is totally destructed, if it is partially destructed, then there could be an option for lessee to terminate. They can also mutually agree to amend the contract. This is what I was mentioning. So let's say there has been a default for 2 months. Now they cannot increase the amount that has already been defaulted because it has become a debt. It has become a dain. However, they can restructure it, mutually agree to increase the rent for the future periods. This is what they can do. In Ijara Muntahiya bit Tamlik, something similar to diminishing musharaka. Ijara Muntahiya bit Tamlik is a rental, is a Ijara which ends up with ownership transfer. Okay, so it starts with Ijara. It's like a financing Ijara, not operating Ijara. So in financing Ijara, the objective is to finance the asset, but starting as a rental agreement. So whatever the objective is, since it is an Ijara, it has to also abide by the rules of Ijara. But when it comes to ownership transfer, it can be through a promise to sell, it can be promise to gift, it can be diminishing musharaka, just like what we have previously discussed. Okay, Jawala. There was one question, what is the difference between Ijara and Jawala? Jawala is based on outcome. Ijara is based on effort. Ijara is saying like, you have to work for 8 hours, you have to work in this project, you have to finish this translation work, this and that, and you get this amount of fees paid. Jawala is where it says, if this certain outcome is met by anyone or within a specific group of people, they will get this amount of reward. Ju'al means more like a reward, not like fees. So some examples could be like mining. If someone is mining some coal or something, traditionally this example was mentioned. If someone mines a gold repository or something, then he will get X amount of reward, for example. Today we can apply Jawala in some other contexts as well. For example, debt collectors. If someone is able to collect the debts, then he will get X percentage of the debt as Jawal, as commission. So 1%, I mean, the difference between in this debt collector thing, the difference between Ijara and Jawala could be like, Ijara would say, you have to put X number of hours, then you get this fees, regardless of you are able to get the debt or not. But in Jawala, the person may not have to put much effort. It could be a very quick work, but he was able to get the outcome, reach the outcome. So he will get the job, he will get the reward. So it is valid even the work is not specified. So we don't know if someone has to collect the debt, we don't know how long he has to work. So the work was not specified, but still it is valid. And it doesn't require acceptance. Like it could be an open offer. It could be open offer to everyone or a group of people, right? Sometimes we will find that if for some thief or someone who is wanted by the security, we will find that it is mentioned, it is announced that if someone can get hold of that person, then he will get this amount of reward. So this is also an example of Jawala. It is valid even if the worker is not specified. So it doesn't need to mention that the contract is between A and B. So A is the offerer and B could be anyone. It could be a large number of people. So that's the difference between Ijara and Jawala. All right, Wakalah. Wakalah is agency, right? Agency could be with or without fees. The agent is authorized to do things that has been authorized by the principal. So yeah, that's the main thing. Otherwise, if it is for fees, the ruling is almost like Ijara, because Ijara is also for fees, meaning that you have to specify the work, you have to specify this and that, specify the fees as well. If it is not for fees, if it is for free, then we just have to specify the work and we have just to authorize. As I previously mentioned, the agency role is also there when there is a Mudaraba for Mudarib. Agency role is also there when someone is a working partner. An agency role is also there when he's just an agent under the Wakalah contract or Wakalah bil Istismar, investment agent. So that's fine. The principle is their Wakalah is also a trust-based contract. So the Wakil, the agent, is not liable for the capital loss. He's only liable for loss when there is a negligence, breach of contract, or misconduct. So those are the very principles. I will skip the rest of the thing. Now this brings us to another quick quiz, inshallah. I think we are almost done. We only have few concepts before we finish, inshallah. Yes, Brother Ahsan, seeking your help for another poll. Jazakumullah khairan. Okay, we'll take another 5 seconds, inshallah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. Let's close the poll. So yes, the majority is correct. It's D. It's what is D? If you look at what is the question. So in a car ijara, the following is the responsibility of lessee. Okay, what is number one is takaful. Now takaful or insurance is a ownership related expense. It is a responsibility of the lessor, not the lessee. Number two, service and oil change on completion of certain mileage. This is maintenance, day-to-day maintenance. This is a responsibility of the lessee. Registration and annual tax, this is also an ownership related expense. This is the responsibility of lessor. And finally, usual wear and tear, this is the responsibility of the lessee. So 2 and 4 is D. All right, so D is the correct answer. Thank you for your participation. Okay, now let's move to sukuk, right? Sukuk, what sukuk means? Sukuk means sukuk in general, almost like shares. The difference is in case of shares, the shares represent a company, but sukuk represent a bundle of assets, which we call securitization, right? It could be tangible assets, usufruct, services, etc. But just like shares represent undivided equal shares in ownership, similarly, sukuk as well, it represents equal value of undivided shares in the ownership. Now there is a difference in purpose as well. Shares, the purpose is equity financing for a company, but sukuk, the purpose is something close to debt-based financing like bonds, right? So end of the day, the financiers, the investors, they want to exit with a sort of fixed return and within a fixed period, but which may not be true for equity-based investments. So those are the some few things to differentiate between the two. This is a overall difference. So investment sukuk, it could be based on sale. So we may have Murabaha sukuk, Salam sukuk, Istisna sukuk. By the way, there is no agreed upon convention like how to name sukuk, but usually one of the prominent contracts used in the sukuk are used to name the sukuk. So in a lease sukuk, for example, in a ijara sukuk, there could be also a component of istisna or any other sale contract as well. But maybe we are naming it ijara because it is the mostly involved contract. So that's something to note. It could be also different partnership-based sukuk. It has to involve specific assets. It couldn't be just like loans without any assets attached. Of course, there are practices of both asset-backed and asset-based sukuk. Asset-backed sukuk are where the sukuk issued are representing certain assets, and the recourse is to those certain assets only. But asset-based sukuk are where the sukuk do not have specific recourse to that specific asset. Rather, that asset was used to issue the sukuk. Slightly different. By the way, in the AAOIFI new governance standard, I think governance standard number 12, if I'm not mistaken, on sukuk governance, it mentions that the assets need to be properly transferred to the SPV. So this makes asset-backed sukuk more in line with AAOIFI standards rather than asset-based sukuk, and it has been clarified in the appendix of that governance standard as well. Anyway, those are not part of the curriculum. Let's go back. So in terms of credibility, either the sukuk is tradable or not, it will depend on the underlying structure. Basically, the logic is the same as I detailed in the currency slide. If the sukuk is representing something tangible asset, of course, it has to follow a certain threshold. Then we can consider that the sukuk is representing tangible assets or intangible assets, and we can trade it for whatever value negotiated upon between the parties. But if the sukuk is mostly representing liquid money or debt receivables, then it has to adhere to the rulings of sarf or currency exchange, meaning that the sukuk can only be tradable, or rather I would say transferable at the face value. Okay. In terms of guarantee, it's not guaranteed by the issuer. But as a disclaimer, in today's sukuk, we see sukuks are in one way or another somehow guaranteed, and that's why the credit rating is also, based on which credit rating is also depending. But in general, from theoretically, sukuk are not guaranteed like bonds or loans. The guarantee perspective here comes through various different mechanisms. Use of proceeds should be Sharia compliant when it comes to sukuk. Now, in the Sharia standard, we can find further details. We have skipped all those very details for today's session. Today's session, we are just going to the very concepts. Okay, now let's come to insurance, Islamic insurance or Islamic reinsurance. Now, why we need Islamic insurance? At the very first thing, if we ask the question, because it has some component of riba, right? Because it's a sale of money for more money. It has a component of gharar, because the parties do not know if the loss event will, it has to be do not know, there is a not missing, sorry. They don't know if there will be a loss and how it will be lost. It has a component of qimar or gambling as well, because the party can either lose everything or it may get more than what he has put as a premium. So for those reasons, we need to have an Islamic alternative to it. And this is where the Islamic insurance comes in. Now, the Islamic insurance, the fundamental concept in general is based on tabarru, is based on donation. So the participants here do not purchase any product, rather they donate into a fund. Since it's a donation, we can tolerate certain gharar, we can tolerate certain other aspects as well, right? So because it's a donation, there will be a lot of other rulings depending on that, right? So other things in the Sharia standard, if you read in line with this rationale, it will be very much clear with you. I will skip the rest of the slide. Yeah, it's just all the different nitty-gritties of this Sharia, of this Islamic insurance. Islamic insurance and Islamic reinsurance are based on the same principles of tabarru or donation or charity. Now, this is a question, if you have gone through the Sharia standard, you will be able to answer. Otherwise, it will be quite tricky. But let's test out and see if we are ready for the exam. Okay. So this is for Islamic insurance and Islamic reinsurance. Who will bear the operating expenses? Okay, let me read out the question. The operating expenses should be borne by option A, surplus of technical results. Option B, the shareholders fund. Option C, the participants fund. And option D, Qard Hasan by the participants funds. We will close in 5 seconds, inshallah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. The answer of majority B is correct. I can see you have prepared for the exam well. For those who are still confused, but still you are going to appear for this exam, please read the Sharia standard and inshallah it will give you more insight. Ruling on guarantees, I think I have discussed enough on guarantees, so I will skip this one. Sharia ruling on credit cards, okay. This is the Sharia standard on debit cards and credit cards, right? So credit card is basically a loan, and in case of loan, The IFI may charge a flat service fee for the services that it has provided. It can get some commission on accepting payments from the party accepting payment, meaning that from the merchant. So in case of credit card, when we use with different merchants, can the IFI take some commission from that? Yes, they can. The IFI is bound to pay the party accepting the card. The cardholder is bound to reimburse the IFI for the payments made on his behalf. It is permissible to purchase gold, silver, or currency if the settlement is as a spot. By the way, this Sharia standard has been issued, very new Sharia standard has been issued on this, which is Sharia standard number 61. It is still in Arabic. Bitaqatu Dafa'i. If you are following TAIF or Adl, you may have noticed that just a couple of weeks ago we had a session on that Sharia standard. But for the sake of this exam, you need to still read this Sharia standard, which is in the current, which is the Sharia standard number 2, perhaps. Yeah. Okay, now Rahan. Rahan is basically mortgage or collateral asset that is given to the creditor, right, as a security. Now it's a trust in the hand of creditor. If there is any appreciation and income of the Rahan, it will also be considered collateralized unless it is agreed upon. The Rahin can benefit from the asset with the permission of Murtahin. Rahin is the one who is the owner of the asset, who is giving the collateral. He can benefit from the asset if there is a permission from Murtahin. So let's say someone is purchasing a car from the IFI, and the car is also collateralized with the IFI, but the client can still use it if there is a permission from IFI. However, if Murtahin, the one who is taking the collateral, the creditor, wants to use the asset, then there is two things. Number one, he has to obtain permission from the owner, and number two, he cannot benefit from it free of charge. He has to pay for it. So those are the two things he has to keep in mind. Okay. Another quick quiz. And then inshallah we'll go to the governance standards. We are almost done, alhamdulillah. So the question is, stipulation of guarantee is prohibited in a contract of A, Murabaha, B, Musharaka, C, Qard, and D, none of the above. Can we pop up the quiz, please, Brother Hassan? Yeah, thank you. All right, I see a lot of participation on this question. Okay, so what I see is that most of the answers are B. Thank you. We can close the poll, Brother Hassan. Yeah, most of the answers are B, which is Musharaka, which is correct. I really appreciate that. I think one of the options we missed out here is Musharaka and Mudaraba. Basically, oh, sorry, this is Murabaha, my bad. Subhanallah. Yes, in Murabaha, what is the relationship in Murabaha? The relationship is a sale contract. So the IFI is selling something and the client is purchasing. So the purchaser here by default has to pay all the amount that is due. So it can be guaranteed, no issue, because it is a guaranteed amount by default. But for Musharaka, for Qard, it is also the same. It's a loan, it's guaranteed. But for Musharaka, it's a partnership and the profit is not guaranteed. Hence, we cannot have such option. Okay, I will finish the rest of the thing very quickly, inshallah. Now, as I mentioned, there are 4 governance standards. in the first governance standard is about Sharia Supervisory Board. So first we will see that it discusses about the composition, like who are the ones, like whenever we are talking about Sharia governance, the very first thing is having a Sharia Supervisory Board for an IFI. Or if we look at today's different new types of Islamic financial solutions like crowdfunding, fintech, etc., then at least having Sharia advisor. The bottom line is there has to be someone who looks up to the Sharia matters and gives fatwas and resolutions. Anyway, so in this first Sharia governance, first governance standard, we will see it mentions about the composition of the SSB, that it is basically an independent body of specialized jurists and fiqh muamalat. At least 3 members should be there. There could be a supervisor to help in performing its duties, right? And there could be one member who is not a Sharia specialist, rather he's a practitioner in Islamic financial institutions, but he also has experience, understanding of overall fiqh muamalat. The responsibilities for them is giving fatwas whenever there is a new product or there is a requirement to do so, and publishing a report, making a report, annual report for the shareholders. They have the powers they should have is that the resolutions that they make are binding upon IFI, and they should have unrestricted view of the documents of the different matters of the IFI, so that their report is objective. The report is genuine. The report is it's proper. Okay. Few things we need to have for the SSB is independence, which is basically achieved through organizational status and objectivity. So there couldn't be any director or significant shareholder sitting in the Sharia board. They will not be under the management, rather they will be considered appointed by the shareholders, etc. In terms of objectivity, of course, they have to have a mental attitude, which the SSB should maintain in performing Sharia supervision. By the way, there is also a Sharia standard on stipulating fatwas, right? Stipulating fatwas, or what exactly? Sorry if I'm mistaken the title, but that is about giving fatwas. So that one you can look in conjunction with this one. In that Sharia standard, it mentions more about the objectivity and other things of a Sharia scholar before issuing a fatwa. Now, why is independence required? To ensure Sharia compliance, to ensure public confidence, and improve IFI's public image. Okay, one last thing before we go to that. Okay, before we go to that is we will find in all those 4 governance standards over and over, one thing coming into the picture is that there are 2 responsible entities here. So one is management. The management is responsible to ensure Sharia compliance, not the SSB. SSB is there to give the report. There could be also external Sharia auditors. Their responsibility is to express opinion. There could be also internal Sharia auditor or internal Sharia review department. Their responsibility is to manage, is to assist the management in assuring Sharia compliance. So Sharia supervisory board's responsibility is to give fatwas, opinions, and report. Internal Sharia review departments and internal Sharia auditors, their responsibility is to assist the management to comply with Sharia according to the SSB's fatwas, etc. And management's responsibility is to ensure the compliance. So those are a few basics. I hope in line with this discussion, if you go to the governance standards, it will be crystal clear, inshallah. There are some more details like how the report would be, what are the processes, etc. are there. So we will be skipping those for today's discussion. So alhamdulillah, we have come to the end and we will proceed to the Q&As. But just before we finish the session, there is one last quiz. The SSB members may include A, BOD member, B, significant shareholder, C, an expert in IFI, even he is not specialized in fiqh muamalat. There is no option D. Okay, this is only A, B, and C. Yeah. Okay, I think it was super duper easy. Okay, alhamdulillah, thank you. We can close the quiz. Jazakumullah khairan. Yes, and let's finish with, before we take the Q&As. This session was brought to you by TAIF and Adel. If you have benefited from it, please share in your social media platforms about both the entities and share the word, spread the word. Jazakumullah khairan. We will inshallah proceed to the Q&As. Yes, Brother Ahsan.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Thank you very much for the extension of time. And then I really appreciate you giving us your precious time. I know since being a CEO of Adel Advisory, you have other commitments and promises to make. But thank you very much for hosting this. May Allah give you jaza for giving this a beautiful session for the students who are going to appear in the exam. Please proceed with the Q&A, and everybody please try to be very specific in Q&A. We'll try to shorten it and answer it as soon as possible, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's start with one question from Bill Faisal in Tama. Like, how many questions in total and how much time? I believe there would be 100 questions for 3 hours. Type of questions would be multiple choice questions. Okay. To get the CSAA certification, candidates shall pass the online written test only, or it will be only online test. But this is this format of exam will only be, the last exam will be June this year, and after that it will be a new format, and the existing CSAA will be split into two. So Shari'ah, certified Shari'ah advisor, and then on the other hand certified Shari'ah auditor, and that will require some additional things like CIPA. So within June only the exams will be done. When does, there was one last part. When does the exam will be conducted this year, and when last registration for the exam? March and June. So March registration is already done. You can still register for June. You have to finish registration by usually at least 1 month before the exam date. I think you can follow TAIF and Adel for more information on this. Okay, thank you. Will this recording be made? Inshallah, yeah, recording should be available. Yeah, materials also inshallah will get. More light, please. Okay, purchase undertaking to donate. Now, undertaking to donate. As I mentioned in detail, to deter the procrastinating debtor from making further defaults, usually what the market does, the industry practice is putting a penalty. Now, a penalty on a default, on a debt, makes it a riba an-nasiya. Like when you cannot pay on time, we increase the time and we put an additional increase of amount as well. So this is what riba an-nasiya. This has been prohibited in Al-Quran as well. Hence, we should always be creative, find alternatives to deter the procrastinating debtor. However, if someone still wants to impose a monetary penalty, rather, then one way could be, according to AAOIFI standards, is to sign an undertaking. So it will be an undertaking, separate undertaking by the defaulter or by the borrower, or not borrower, rather we say by the client or the customer of the IFI, that if I default on this, then I undertake to make this, either X amount or X percentage of the total facility to donate to the charity fund of this IFI. Right? So IFI will still be able to take the amount from him and disburse it to charity. And I explained why this is different from taking penalty and putting into a charity. So if you have missed that, you can again look to the recorded video inshallah later on. Okay, next question from Ibrahim Imran Mullah. How will the bank receive profit if you can only change currency on exchange rate without profit? Okay, what I mentioned in the session is that the bank, if the debtor wants to settle during the settlement date, if he wants to settle with a different currency, then the exchange rate should be applied on that day of settlement, either by following an international exchange rate or by mutual agreement. But it has to be a spot rate, something that has been only agreed upon that day. So that is what I mentioned. But I didn't say that bank cannot make a profit or margin on top of the international exchange rates, prevalent exchange rates. Definitely they can make. The only thing that they have to remember is that if the currencies are same, US dollar for US dollar, then it has to be same amount, 1 for 1. If it is different, of course, when we talk about currency exchange, it's the exchange of different currencies. Then it's at the liberty of between the two parties. As long as it is done on spot, they can negotiate for any amount. Okay, I hope that's clear. Haji Maulid, I think you mentioned to share the slide. Inshallah, those will be shared. Salam Mufti from CD Contact. Could Hamish Jiddiya be transferred to become Arbun after the signing of contract? Yes. So Hamish Jiddiya can be considered part of the price after the contract is concluded. This can be done. Thank you. Muhammad Naveed, what is the difference between Hawala and Qard? Qard is loan, a straightforward loan. So I give you some money, you will give me return that money. That's Qard. Hawala is transfer of debt. So we didn't cover Hawala today in our brief session. Hawala is like, so I, for some whatever reason, either because of a sale contract or because of a loan, I owe to person A, let's say $10,000. On the other hand, person B, there is another person, he owes to me, let's say $10,000. Maybe I sold to him something, or maybe I lent him some money. So what I'm saying to person A is that you go to person B and recover your loan, your debt from that person. This is Hawala. Hawala is transferring. So I'm transferring person A from myself to person B. That's Hawala. Now, based on this fundamental understanding, you will find in the Sharia standard, there are several rulings applicable to it. Like if I'm transferring, does it mean that person A will not have any recourse from me if person B is not paying, right? Or if person B has to top up, then can he get recourse from me? So those type of rulings are there in the Sharia standard. I hope it is clear. Difference between Ijara and Jawala, I tried to explain that. I hope it's clear now. I can repeat if you still need the explanation. Why penalty clause is allowed in Istisna and not in Salam? Okay, that's a good question. In Salam, it becomes a debt. If I'm not mistaken, the Sharia basis is that in Salam, it makes it a debt of monetary value, because of which it is not permitted. But in Istisna, it's against, it's not against the debt, a monetary debt, rather against the debt of a work, rather than a monetary debt. You can find this in the Sharia basis of the relevant Sharia standard. I'm sorry, I think what I responded with is not 100% clear, but in general, that's the case. So one is in exchange of a monetary debt, the other one is exchange of a work debt. So something is due to finish. Another thing is in Istisna, when we decrease the price, it makes it, when we impose a penalty, it makes it like a decrease or discount in the price. That doesn't apply in Salam. Why? You can check back the Sharia standard basis. I'm sorry, I don't recall it properly here right now. Thank you. Okay, next question. What is the rational dalil of that penalty of, oh, it's the same question, subhanallah. Okay, I will try to quickly check and respond to your questions, inshallah, via, we'll try to see, and we'll try to send to everyone, inshallah, this particular answer. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum from Abdul Hamid. Assalamu alaikum. In Musharaka, variable profit sharing ratio, can it be performance based? No, performance based cannot. Performance based, we can only tag the ceiling, as we mentioned. So we can mention if there it goes above certain ceiling, it will be received only by, let's say, the working partner or the mudarib. But if we tag with performance, that will be uncertainty in the profit sharing ratio, and hence it will not be permissible. Okay, from Alma Banu, would the presentation be shared? Yes, inshallah, it will be shared. Could you please clarify the issue of penalty clause inclusion in sale-based contracts? This from CD Conte. Yes, is the same rationale. when in a sale-based contract, what happens? A purchaser purchases an asset, right? So he cannot pay the whole price now. The price becomes a debt. Now, what a penalty clause would mean is that if you are unable to pay the debt on time, then you have to pay additional amount. That's exactly riba nasiya, and hence we want to we don't want to have it. So one alternative is to basically include a undertaking to donate in case there is a default. Okay, Sajjad Ali, please describe social sukuk. Social sukuk is not explained in AAOIFI standard number 70 on sukuk. I guess the sukuk, as I mentioned, there is no standard naming convention. Names today we can find in various different reasons. So based on the underlying AAOIFI standard is more based on underlying Sharia standards, like underlying Sharia contracts like Musharaka, Murabaha, etc. But today we see green sukuk, technology sukuk, social sukuk, etc., which are basically tagged to various purposes of the sukuk. We don't have those in AAOIFI standards, and there is no Sharia issues as well. Sharia issues are basically based on how on what purposes the sukuk has been issued. Was the asset properly transferred or not? The ownership was proper or not? The tradability. Those are the Sharia things that we have to be careful about. Thank you. Gharar Ali say the question is, does bank distribute actual profit or expected profit monthly? Usually it is expected profit. Usually the practice is distributing expected profit because the actual profit is only realized end of the financial year, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you. CD Conte, how is the wear and tear the responsibility of the lessee? Please clarify. Wear and tear, what we mean by wear and tear is that, for example, if an apartment was taken as a lease, so the water tap, right, after certain use, it will tear, it will wear and tear. So who will change the water tap? It's a responsibility of the lessee, because when he was given the apartment for rent, he saw it's working, right? So it's his responsibility to change it and bring back to the working condition. But if there is a big issue like the sanitary pipe or something has burst out, or as I mentioned, the roof is there is some holes and it's not protecting from rainwater, etc., or the door has damaged, so those will be considered responsibility of the lessee. I understand your point. It could be often subjective, but between best guess and to be just to each other, both parties need to be very compassionate and to each other, not just passing to another person the whole liability. That's the beauty of this fiqh al-muamalat al-maliyya. Okay. Why bonds isn't tradable? Isn't tradable meaning from Sharia point of view because it's loan. It's not that it's not tradable per se. Of course, we see in the exchanges being tradable, but from Sharia point of view, since it represents loan, it cannot be traded. Dr. Zakir Sheikh, is takaful, what about shareholders? In takaful, what about shareholders fund? Is it really distributed in between takaful company and the customer? Shareholders fund will not be distributed with the customer. Shareholders fund is to share. Okay, what is the role of a takaful operator in a takaful company? Usually the takaful operator would be like wakil or manager of the takaful funds, and in exchange of that management role, they will have certain fees, wakalah fees. On top of that, the fund for the takaful together with shareholders fund could be invested in a separate vehicle, and from there they can have a profit sharing ratio, or they can have a there could be another revenue source from there. So the shareholders fund will earn those, but shareholders fund will not be distributed to the customers, meaning the participants of the takaful. Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, dear sir. Is there any Telegram WhatsApp channel established to provide support to CSAA matters? I think it's a good suggestion. Inshallah, Adil and TAIF can look into it to come up with a Telegram channel. Thank you. What is the pass mark? If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 70%, but it needs to be checked. You can go to AAOIFI, you can just Google. Yes, Brother Zia, wanted to share something?
It's 70%, that's correct.
70%. Okay, okay, Jazakallah khair. which are the important standards? All standards are important because the questions will come scattered from all the standards. However, some standards are like fundamentals. The principles are applied within other standards as well. I think I mentioned in the very beginning. You can refer to that if you have missed the beginning of the session today. Okay, Shukran, TAIF and Adal Azwazri, thank you so much. Please have a link in the form to reserve by organization. Okay. Okay, what is the pass mark? I think we addressed. Do you have any tips for the exam? The tips is you need to read it at least once, the whole Sharia standard, including all the chapters. All the exam will come only from the statement of the standard and definitions. Sharia basis is not included. So otherwise, the only tip is you have to finish it. Try to finish more than once, but the very basic once, and underline the things that are that you need to relook at. Okay. And one more tip could be to participate in the mock exam. TAIF has a mock exam. I believe later on Brother Ahsan or Brother Zia will share. But yeah, that could be another way to assess where you are. Can you please explain salient features of Hawala? I think I mentioned the most importantly, it's basically transfer of debt. And today, when we talk about transfers, money transfers, it is based on the concept of Hawala. There are a few other things. Because of the time restraint, we may not be able to relook into this. But if you go to the Sharia standard, it's very straightforward. Ibrahim, Jazakallah khairan. I'm only writing in June. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khairan. Haji Maulid. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan. How Sharia compliant is it to request a waiver of penalty after giving an undertaking to donate to charity? It's an undertaking. So if there is a waiver given to that undertaking, it's fine. Because it's not a contract. It's not a commutative contract. It should be fine. It should be fine. Sharia compliant. Is it permissible to use debt owned to investments? Is it permissible to use debt owed to investments? Sorry, the question is not clear to me, Hujjatullah. Maybe if you can ask again, which standards are more from CSAA exam? I responded to it already. Ziaur Rahman, is there negative marks for incorrect answers? No, there is none. You only get the mark or you don't get it. Will the mock exam from TAIF include 100 questions? I believe so. TAIF can address that finally, inshallah. However, we can, okay. The rest of the 2 or 3 questions are to TAIF. So yeah, Brother Ahsan or Brother Zia, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, the mock exam consists of 100 questions and it's timed accordingly for 3 hours and 70% passing marks. And you can redo it multiple times and every time the question shuffles as well. Thank you very much, Sheikh. I believe we have answered all the questions. And
how can the participants attend the mock exam? I think this is also something.
Mock exam needs to be attended through TAIF Learning platform, and then you can check out taiflearning.com/courses. You will see a mock exam tab over there. You can go there and you can purchase the mock exam to do it. However, if you do the course itself, then you will find with every standard there is at least 10 questions with every standards covered after every video. That is different than mock exam. So you will have 48 standards and 4 governance standards with all have 10 quizzes, and after that you can do a mock exam as well.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you very much for your time. And I really appreciate that. Hopefully everybody will enjoy. We have set up a survey right after the end of the session. Please find, it's just only 5 questions. I'll be happy to hear your feedback. Jazakallah, Sheikh. Any last word and wishes for the students who are appearing? Inshallah, we'll end the session then.
Thank you. As I was mentioning in the very beginning, the objective of going through this is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to achieve Sharia compliance, not only in our financial activities or career progression, but also in our personal life. May Allah give us that tawfiq. And I really wish you all the best. And I make dua that you all pass the CSAA exam. And really, it's a very big responsibility, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of you and us tawfiq to contribute for the best of the humanity, for the ummah, as well as the Islamic finance industry. Jazakumullah khairan for attending the session today. Please get connected with us, with me, with Adel, with TAIF, connected in LinkedIn, and also share your experience in your social medias to spread the word. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you, TAIF. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We can end the session, Brother Hassan.